How would you do if you were chip leading a final table? Today we play a super bounty, only final table pays, with a 10 big blind chip lead over the rest of the pack going into the final table. Where will we finish? Where will we cash? Let's go and find out. Alright lads, we made a big mistake while filming this video. I was watching YouTube on my other monitor while I was playing the final table, or while I was playing the entire tournament on ACR here. So I didn't know that OBS also records the audio input, like the things that come out, the audio output from my computer, all the things that come out of my computer, even if I'm connected to AirPods. So if I do use the original audio that we have from playing the tournament, you're just gonna hear like, you know, YouTube videos playing at the background.
Are you serious right now, bro?
Alright, so I'm not going to do that. I've done audio voiceovers of everything that happened. This is not going to be the case for future videos, but I hope you enjoy. Yeah, so the first big hand of the day, we wake up with 5-3 offsuit in the big blind, and usually this is obviously a snap fold 90% of the time when anybody raised at the table, but luckily everybody at our table was playing pretty tight, so everybody folded. We get one caller, which is the small blind, so I just check it through. On the flop, we hit bottom pair, and he does something really interesting here. He decides to bet 4 big blinds on ace 7-3 rainbow, and to me, I was like, he probably doesn't have an ace here, considering the fact that he only called pre-flop, he didn't raise. So the question is whether or not he had a 7. And to me, I had some removal to some 7s with like 5-7 suited, for example, maybe here. But for me, I was kind of just like, if I'm only losing to a 7, I probably can see a turn. So I'm going to call here for 4 big blinds. There's an 8 of spades on the turn. So what he does is he goes all in.
What the hell?
And for me, I was like, if I called on the flop, I definitely have to call on the turn, especially because there's more bluffs here. And I was right. He, I think, had a straight draw. I don't even know what he actually had there. But the point is, we called it off. We won his bounty, which was 38 cents. And I'm not 100% sure whether or not I played that hand correctly there. I don't know whether or not I was supposed to call on the flop or the turn. Please let me know down in the comments. I tried to search it up on a solver, but unfortunately I don't want to pay money for GTO, right? So I don't want to if you guys could just let me know what you guys would have done there, that'd be perfect. Again, I'm just a beginner. I don't entirely know what I'm doing yet. So yeah, please let me know. But yeah, it was good to win our first big hand of the day, collect a bounty, and move up in the rankings in the tournament, putting us a little more safely into the middle of the pack. Yeah, so the next cool hand that we have is we have ace 7 offsuit in the cutoff. I decide to raise here with it just because I'm in position for the vast majority of players, and I think that it is somewhat strong enough for us to be able to play it. Luckily, the button folds, which means that we definitely have position on every player that I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to call or if they're just going to fold, and we can steal the pot right now. But, you know, having position is probably good here, especially because our hand isn't actually that strong. On the flop, it comes 6 queen 3 with 2 clubs. For me, that pretty much means everything missed, right? I literally have nothing here, but I just decide to c-bet for 2.5 bigs. So for around a third, a little less than a third of the pot, just to kind of rep my range. One of the players in middle position doesn't believe me, so they call. But then on the turn, a king comes, and I was like, all right, I definitely have to rep my range here. If you don't think I have a queen, that means I probably have a king. So I'm going to bet even larger here. And yeah, I was right. He folded. I took down this large pot for 13 bigs. 14 bigs, actually. So really happy to take that down with a bluff. Yeah, so this next hand isn't actually that interesting. We wake up with ace 8 offsuit in later position. And for me, this spot was pretty close. I was thinking about whether or not, because there were already limpers, I was thinking whether or not I should just limp or I should raise. In the end, I opted for a 2.5x big blind raise. and just praying that everybody behind me will fold, which thank God they do. So in the end, it's a heads up between me and DA886 with me in position against them. Flop comes ace-2-5 with 2 hearts. We hit top pair with a decent kicker. So when they check, I decide to bet very, very small in order to induce them to, call with their draws with any potential like smaller pairs that aren't aces here. Just because an ace is in my range, to be completely fair, they decide to re-raise me. So I just call. On the turn comes a 6 of diamonds, and they bet 5.3 bigs. And with a top pair, right, I had to call. But at this point, I was a little worried that maybe he had a ace queen, ace 10, a better kicker ace. So I decided to slow down. But, turns out they had jack 6 offsuit. So I was winning the whole time. Again, not that interesting of a flop, but of a hand, but it was a huge pot for me to win that shot me up again to like 14th place at the tournament. So happy to take it down as well. Yeah, and so far things are going really well for me, right? So this is probably one of the first hands where I think I made a mistake. One player, the under the gun, shoves for 8.46 bigs, and at this point I'm like, with Queen Jack offsuit, I probably have to call that off. It's going to be a flip, but you know what? I have to take my chances here, especially when I have so many big blinds. This is the way we're gonna stack up in terms of bounties. This is the way we're going to ladder up in terms of chips as well. So it was really important that I had to call this off here. So I did call, but then the small blind decides to jam for all in themselves, and I was like, all right, if you're re-jamming when 2 players in front of you already called, you probably have a very big premium that's like beating me already, dominating me like aces or kings or ace king or something, right? Or king queen. Like I didn't want to get into a spot where I was grossly dominated. Turns out he has tens, and turns out the other guy had fucking 8-9. All right, like what is my life, dude? And I would have hit 2 pair on the turn if I decide to call. But you know what? You got to move on. You can't dwell on these types of losses. But at that time, I was so gutted because I would have been able to win like literally like 40 big blinds, like just like that. So I was absolutely gutted. But nothing you can do about that. You live and you learn, right? So yeah. Okay, so maybe back to winning ways now. We wake up with King 8 of hearts in the cutoff. I decide to raise again just because I'm in later position, so chances are I'm going to have position on most people. Unluckily for me, the button decides to call, so that means that I'm going to be playing out of position, maybe in middle position, depends on what the early position player does, and they decide to call as well. And we flop pretty much the dream. We flop top pair with 2 hearts, 8-3-6 with 2 hearts there. So I decide to bet for 3 big blinds, and the button decides to call here, which I think is kind of suspicious. Maybe they have the ace of hearts here, but maybe they have, I don't know what else they could have. Ace 8 maybe? I don't know. But anyways, the turn comes the ace of hearts, which gives us the absolute nuts. I'm literally buzzing here. I decide to trap and check it back to them. They bet 3 big blinds, and I just decide to call, hoping to lay a larger trap in the future. On the river 4 of diamonds, it's pretty inconsequential. I decide to bet very, very small here. I decide to bet 4 big blinds, a fifth of the pot, to try and induce them to call, or even if they have a strong hand, perhaps even raise in this position, right? So, for a fifth of the pot, they're most definitely going to be calling here most of the time with anything, with 2 pair, with aces, whatever. They decide to re-raise, so I 4-bet jam them. Turns out they had Queen Jack of hearts there, so an absolutely sick cooler that gives us a massive chip lead over my table. I was absolutely buzzing over that. I did get quite lucky, but I do think that some of the things I did there were quite strategic in terms of trapping, in terms of betting small to induce raises and stuff, so I was quite happy with my play there. At this point, I'm second in the tournament. I'm absolutely living life, sun running, like absolutely everybody. I wake up with pocket fours in the button, and there's 2 people who have already bet 2.5 bigs. One of the players is very, very short with 6.7 bigs behind, so I decided to raise to 10 to try and isolate him. Unluckily for me, the other player who's in the middle position decides to call as well, so we go to a flop of 6-9 ace, which is absolutely horrible for pocket fours. We needed to set mine there, but unfortunately we don't get it, and they call when I decide to c-bet on the flop. And so it checks through with them both having aces and me losing around 20 big blinds in that one hand. I was absolutely gutted there. Yeah, so this next hand I made a big mistake. Queen 10 suited, kind of in middle position. I decided to raise to 2.5. Nothing wrong with that in my opinion. The small blind sees this raise, decides to re-raise me to 8 bigs, and then the big blind decides to jam after that, and I'm like, holy shit, what is going on, right? And in my mind, I'm like, all right, the small blind is definitely pot committed now, so we're going to have a pot around 40, so I need to bet an additional, like, 12 bigs to win 40. Like it has to happen, right? In terms of the pot odds and stuff. Turns out the small blind had fucking aces. I was never winning that in a million years, and I lose another like 15 bigs to drop me to around 30 bigs now. So now I'm again kind of middle in the pack, slightly below average stack. Yeah, and I was just absolutely, gutted with that as well. Okay, this next hand, I wake up with 4-2 of hearts in the cutoff. The big blind has been sitting out this entire time. He is about to blind out of this tournament, so everybody wants to collect this bounty. That's why everyone, their moms, is calling right over here, as you can see. But the player right before me decides to jam as well, and I was like, okay, there can be a lot of bounties to be collected here, so I need to rep a really strong hand to isolate everybody else who's just limping into the pot. Yeah, turns out the person right ahead of me had 7-5 suited while I have 4-2 suited, 1 heart on the flop, 2 hearts on the turn. Can we hit it on the river? Yes, we do, to knock out 2 players. It was only around 12 big blinds that I won, but more importantly, I almost won $1 in bounties, which ensures that I break even on this tournament. In fact, I make a little bit of money, around 20-30 cents, which got me absolutely hyped to play this tournament again. Alright, so for more bounty knockout play, I wake up with ace-3 offsuit in under the gun +1. The big blind is incredibly short, so I decide to raise up to 2.5 bigs. Didn't do a really good job of isolating because the button calls, so I'm playing in middle position. The small blind folds, but yeah, this big blind decides to go all in. I just flat. On the flop, I hit a 3, and again, I have to be repping my range here, especially because I'm under the gun +1. It's incredibly tight, my range should be, even though I only hit bottom pair, but that king is definitely in my range, so I decide to bet. They fold. Turns out the big line had ace-jack of clubs. It always had to be a sweat, right? But turns out we win after they brick the flush draw on the river to pick up another bounty. So we're doing really well in terms of bounties here, and we also have around 40 bigs now, which puts me safely into final table territory. Yeah, so this next hand we have king 9 offsuit in the small blind, so we just decide to flat a 2 big blind raise. On the flop we hit second pair, so I just decide to check it, and if they decide to bet, I'm just gonna call. It's pretty straightforward. On the turn we hit 2 pair, so I decide to get trappy, but they just decide to check it back. On the river another queen comes, so I'm like, okay, chances are they probably don't have a queen, so I'm gonna try and bet slightly for very thin value here. So I bet around 3 big blinds, so around a fourth of the pot, hopefully to induce a call, and they do call. And turns out our top pair was good enough. They had ace-9 while I had king-9, so they actually got really unlucky that the king came on the turn to give me that 2 pair. Okay, this next hand is absolutely insane. I am on the button with 3-4 of diamonds, right? So I decide to get a little tricky here. As the second, in chips at the tournament, I want to, be a chip bully. I want to bully people into paying, folding and just picking up the blinds and picking up limps and stuff. We get 1 caller from the under the gun +1, and if I'm not wrong, I think, yeah, the middle position player does fold. The flop comes 6-7-5, giving us a 7 high straight, and I and even better, the early position player decides to bet. So I re-raise him, and he calls my raise, and then he decides to jam on the turn. Turns out with ace-9 offsuit, I don't even know what they had, to be completely honest, there after the turn, and why they decided to jam. Maybe it was just a pure bluff, but it's just unlucky that they ran into not the absolute nuts, the third nuts, right, with a lower end of the straight, and I won a crap ton of blinds from that, around 20 blinds, and that safely put me into, I think first place of the tournament, if I'm not wrong. With 11 players left in the tournament, the short stack our table raises to three big blinds when we have king queen offsuit, and to me this is a pure jam, putting pressure back on the short stack to figure out whether or not they want to call. Turns out he calls with ace-5 offsuit. I hit 2-pair on the flop. On the turn they get a club draw, and I'm like, why does it always have to be a fucking sweat? Why? With a 5 of clubs, man, they could hit a flush draw, but turns out the river is the 7 of spades, knocking them out of the tournament and putting us into the stone bubble as the third, with third in chips right now. So we are doing quite comfortably right now in the tournament, which is really, really good, and collecting another bounty. A couple of minutes later, we make the money. Yeah, let's go. Which means we guarantee make at least like $2 from the tournament solely from our bounties, because we make slight profit from making the final table alone. So in the small blind, in the very first hand, we get ace queen suited. So I decide, you know what, it's time to raise it up to 4 big blinds, because there's one limper, so I wanted to punish them for limping. They call. The flop comes king-9 king with a rainbow. It doesn't really hit my range, so I decide to check, and they check back. It hits his range much better, sorry. On the turn, there's a 2 of clubs, so I decide to check again, because they might, to avoid, being trapped by them. Maybe they had ace king or king queen or something, and they were just trying to trap us. But on the river, I decide, okay, if they were trapping us, they would probably already done it by now, so our ace queen is probably good. I bet for a third of the pot, and they fold, so I win 10 big blinds right away in the final table to extend our lead as the first place chip leader. And unfortunately, friends, this is where everything kind of goes wrong. Again, we wake up with pocket 4s in the big blind, and we've got a lot of limpers, like 2 limpers right behind me, so I decide to raise it up big again to punish them to 6 big blinds. The under the gun player calls, which is not a comforting sign. The flop comes 5-6-9, which looks pretty safe to me, right? Because I think that their ranges are probably like ace king, the aces, kings, queens ranges and stuff. But the under the gun player goes all in for 12 bigs there. After I bet for 5 big blinds as a continuation bet, the under the gun +1 decides to fold here, so I decided to do some pot odds. So if I put in an extra 7 blinds, it's going to be 44 big blinds. So I was like, okay, I need around like 14% to call. I thought I had 14%. Turns out he hit a set on the flop, and I was virtually drawing dead, and I lost a humongous pot, losing the chip lead, and just like honestly fucking that up big time. I played that so wrong, to be honest, and if you guys have any tips and recommendations in terms of what I should have done there, maybe I shouldn't have bet the 5 bigs to begin with, and maybe I thought I was kind of stuck, pot committed after that. Please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking to learn and get better at this game, because I really, really enjoy playing poker. A couple of minutes later, we ladder up. The short stack decides to go all in. There's a call, ace-jack versus top pair with a better kicker against top pair with a worse kicker, which is really, really sick, especially at the final table. But I'm not complaining, because we just laddered up and made additional money, now 91 cents instead of 78 cents. So a ladder of around like 13 cents, which honestly at micro stakes is a very big deal. So I was buzzing about that. Okay, so a few hands later, we get ace jack offsuit, under the gun +1, and we have around 8 bigs left. The blinds just went up, so it was definitely time for me to jam. Everybody's pretty short stacked besides from 2 players on this table, so I didn't expect anybody to really call, and I thought I could probably just pick up the blinds. Turns out the big blind decides, tanks for a long wall and decides to call with pocket 5, so it's a flip, but they hit a set of 5s on the flop again. So what I've learned from playing this tournament is pocket 4s is not my hand, and pocket 5s is my biggest arch nemesis, because 2 times somebody had pocket 5s, 2 times they hit a set on the flop, and 2 times they smoked me, once knocking me out of the tournament. So that was a kind of sad way to go out, but hey, I'm really happy with how I did, winning around $3 from this tournament, so can't really be complaining. Alright guys, so in the end of the Super Bounty final table pays, we ended up in 8th place, barely making the money after going into the final table with the chip lead. Definitely made some mistakes in that final table, but I would love to know, leave it down in the comments, what would you guys have done in the spots that I was in? I know that I definitely made some mistakes, especially with that pocket 4s hand, which, pretty much punted off my entire stack. But I'm still new to poker. I don't know perfect GTO strategy. I don't know, what spots in which I'm supposed to fold and call that well. So if you guys have any tips, any recommendations, anything that you want to say about how you guys would have played those hands, please leave it in the comments below. But remember, please make it constructive, because I'm not that good at poker and I don't want to get bullied. Please, if you bully me, I'm gonna cry. But yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy the content that we make here, please drop a like, subscribe. We're going to be doing streams in the very near future and more highlight videos with commentary like this. So if that's something that you like, hopefully we'll see you next time. Yeah, bye.